Hey guys, welcome back. So tonight you're catching us a little bit tired.
Very tired.
We just put the kids to bed. It's Wednesday, Tuesday.
Yeah, only Tuesday.
It's Tuesday, August 19th, and yeah, we can't believe it's only Tuesday. This week our child care helper is out of the country.
On vacation.
And so I took the week off my regular 9 to 5 job, and I've been doing the kids to school in the morning and little baby man to daycare, and then picking them up at the afternoon and bringing them home, and doing my other kind of work in between, and it's been a lot.
Yeah, you've been doing a lot. Definitely.
And we wanted to do a video though because we had this one on our list to do. We wanted to talk about why we choose to be working parents. And the key word there is choose, because we are fortunate enough to where if Z wanted to not work, we could still make ends meet. Or if I wanted to not work, we could still make ends meet. But we choose to both work, which I feel, puts us, and there's reasons for that, but there's also disadvantages as a result of both of us working. And so tonight we wanted to talk a little bit about those things and kind of why we make the choices that we do. I feel like I've talked a lot.
You did talk a lot. Well, let me first start off saying I thought it was an interesting topic. Granted, I never thought it was a choice for me to work. Granted, yes, I know that, I technically could stop working and we can survive. We're fortunate enough. But I've always grown up with the notion to, as a woman, to have your own, right? It was never me not working. I grew up in a household where my mom worked full time. She was or is a CNA, and a lot of times she would live in where she worked.
No, what's a CNA?
A certified nurse assistant, for those that don't know. And she still does that in her 70s, but it was never a thought that I would, stay at home. And don't get me twisted, stay at home parent is a full time 24/7, always on job. So I bow down to those who are stay at home. But I always grew up with the thought process or the perspective that I was going to work, and if I had the opportunity, be a mother and be a wife. So a little bit different in having the choice. I just thought it was a little bit a part of who I am. I don't know how you feel about that.
So from my perspective, I know growing up in the culture, the area that I grew up in, the a lot of the moms in particular were stay-at-home moms, and I feel to a certain extent that's what society told girls they should be, is you should aspire to get married, and if you're lucky you'll be in a position where you can afford to stay at home and just take care of the kids. And that was actually the situation that I had with our older children's mom, back when she was with us. I worked and she stayed home and she took care of the kids, and that was fine. It kept things compartmentalized. I think like,
What do
okay,
you mean by that?
so it was very easy to define roles, kind of like, okay, I go out and I make the money, and you take care of the children and the house and the social things and make sure that all those things are working. And it was very easy to kind of say, okay, this is what I'm doing and this is what you're doing. But what I think a lot of people don't anticipate going into that role, the stay-at-home role, and what I certainly didn't. I don't think I respected this as much as I should have. Being somebody who was out working, I thought that what I was doing was like the equal or greater contribution to what was happening, just because it was I didn't understand.
So are you saying that you thought you contributed more to the household because you didn't understand what that entailed as far as being a stay-at-home parent?
Pretty much, yeah.
Okay.
I would say that with that relationship, I was kind of aloof
Hmm.
to what was to how much work it really took to take care of the kids. We had two kids. They're 12 months and 3 weeks apart. You know, a real
Yeah,
handful.
yeah.
And I guess I don't think that I fully respected everything, you know, the extent of the things that she was doing.
Yeah.
You know, and she had a lot of, you know, she had a lot of difficulties with it, you know, adjusting, because when we met, she was a person who was working. She was a mid manager at, you know, a retail place,
Yeah.
and so she was a working person, and she adjusted into the stay at home mom role, and 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 I think that I know I didn't appreciate it as much as I should have, and also, but I think that society teaches us not to appreciate that as much as we should, or at least the society
Mm.
that I was in, because I know for some reason there was always an undertone that like what men were doing, going out and making money, was, you know, was superior, and was kind of like was kind of the greater effort and the more estimable
It's kind of like a
part.
patriarchy,
It's a
right?
it's a
Right.
patriarchal view,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, I think it's an old, it's still a viewpoint that persists, as you know, but
Yeah.
I think it's just a classic, viewpoint. The man is the household, he brings home the bacon, and a lot of people don't appreciate what usually is the woman, but although now you have a lot of stay at home dads too, of how much they contribute. And, it's a lot, right? And you could
It
probably even
is.
attest to that with these past few days with, having the kiddos, picking them up, getting them ready in the morning, plus trying to work. It's a lot. Rewarding, but it's a lot. Let me ask you out of curiosity, how did you feel about the transition of having that set up from, you know, your former wife being stay at home and you kind of being the breadwinner, to meeting me where, I was in the midst of a residency, full time working. You knew after residency I was going to be, full time attending physician. The plan was never for me to work or to stay at home. How did you feel about that setup when you first met me? Were you looking forward to that change? Did it make you proceed with caution?
That's a great question, and I think the to kind of qualify where I was at that point. So Z and I met very shortly after the older children's mom had passed away, and so at that point in time, I had taken over everything. With regard to the children, I was responsible for the house. I was responsible for the kids. I was responsible for making the money. I was doing everything. You know, I very quickly got some childcare help, but I was doing everything. So I didn't think that. Well, and also, one thing that I was scared of was I kind of had a I was worried that because people are always trying to jump into the role of homemaker without necessarily knowing what it entails,
Mm-hmm.
I was worried about, you know, the fact that I lived in the suburbs with I had, you know, had a house in the suburbs with kids. I had a good job. I just lost my wife, and I was worried, you know, I or somebody else is going to try to replace that, is going to try to like recreate that situation really fast. Like somebody's going to come in and try to, you know, and try to be a homemaker, be a stay at home, you know, with me, and maybe that person doesn't really like my kids.
Okay.
Maybe they just like the idea of like being a stay at home mom.
Yeah.
And when I met you, I very quickly acclimated to the idea that okay, you're going to work and I'm going to work, and we're going to kind of collaborate on the domestic stuff. You know,
Okay.
it's going to be kind of like the domestic stuff is not your main deal, it's not my main deal, but it's kind of something that we're both responsible for, and we're gonna make it happen
Okay.
somehow.
Okay.
So I very quickly got used to the idea of
Okay.
that.
Okay. Okay.
And now, how about you? I mean, were you worried about like stepping into this? Well, we've talked before about how you felt stepping into the relationship, with the kids and all that.
Yeah, I think it was slow, right? Because if you've seen any of our other videos, I talk about initially when I started out dating in my 30s, I didn't want to date anyone who had children. And it was just something that was different about the situation for me. And I think what helped me transition is you were really active in making sure that I was comfortable every step of the way, right? You know, from the grandparents or the extended family around the children, just very, he played an active role in the slow transition into me in my mother role, which was really good. Because going from no children to two young children, it's a lot for anybody, right?
She did an amazing job, by the way.
Yeah. And there was along the way, as you know, there was a lot of second guessing myself. There was a lot of, do they like me? Am I doing this right? Am I good enough? There was a lot of that on the path. It still happens sometimes, although we've had a young one. We have a young one together. So, yes, initially, was I a little bit cautious? Yes, I definitely was. How do you think our society compares to other countries in regards to how we view having two working parents?
Yeah, that's a great question. And this is actually something that I just recently dealt with this year with a volunteer organization that I'm with. We were with a group of other actuaries who are from Mexico, and they were all female, which is awesome. And we were talking about the differences between United States culture and Mexican culture, and they were mentioning to me how a lot of the young ladies in Mexico are opting to not have children because of how it sets them back from being able to accomplish the things that they want to accomplish. And and subsequent to that, I found out that a lot of the laws in the United States protecting people who go on, maternity leave or leave for childcare are not as good as other countries.
Yeah.
So, other countries make it easier for women to go out and have kids and to come back into the workforce. Where a lot of the time here, it's going to, they don't give a lot of time off for family
Yeah.
medical leave. A lot of the time, it's not paid.
Correct. It's a
If you go too
sacrifice.
long.
Yeah, you may lose your
Yeah.
job in the midst of it.
So let's kind of bring it back in though, because we're the point of this video is we're talking about why do you and I choose to both be working parents, because it's obviously there's obviously some drawbacks which we'll talk about in a second.
Yeah.
But what is it that makes us both choose to do that?
I think what I was starting off with, it was never really in my mind a choice. I know, yes, it is technically I can stop working, but I never, like I said, I never approached it as it was a choice. It was just something that I was going to do. For example, like college, like I just knew that I was going to do college. I know that I'm aware it's a choice and not everyone does college, but it was, I feel like just a part of my, my progression in life.
Yeah.
It never even, I never thought about it as a choice, kind of how you view it, or maybe how some other ladies view it. Like I said, I grew up in a household with a working mother. I saw working aunts. I never felt any less loved. So I always thought it was possible to work and be a great mother and be a great partner. There was
Hmm.
never any double guessing that, or, I never thought there was an alternative to that.
Hmm. And of course, that's not. I don't think you're in any way, shape, or form demeaning what people who choose to be just stay-at-home moms are
No,
doing.
no. I'm
Yeah.
just talking from my experience, what I
Right.
saw, right? Because a lot of people will say, you know, talking to me, like, well, who's watching your children? Some people look down at me, I feel like some people do with, working full time and, having childcare or, having the young kid in daycare. So I don't look down. It was just for me, that was going to be my natural progression, I think. Home too.
Yeah.
What made you or what makes you continue to be a full time working parent?
Yeah. No, that's a great question. So I say this all the time that the biggest asset that you have is your ability to go out and make money. So and and I think that if you don't have that, it can become a point of contention because so for example, in my prior relationship, I know that came up as an issue because I know that my partner didn't feel secure because they didn't have anything to fall back on. Whereas I think it's great, and I think it helps people in a relationship, in our relationship specifically, because we both know that if for whatever reason you get tired of me, you can go do your thing,
Yeah.
and vice versa. Not that that would ever happen,
Yeah.
but it relieves a lot of the contention. It relieves a lot of the undertones. I mean, you have the ability to go take care of yourself. I have the ability to go take care of
Yeah, we
myself.
both bring to the table. And I always tell you, and this is not a way to invalidate you or anything of that nature, but I always say if you hit your head and God forbid, you lose your marbles and, you're aggressive and you're loud and we have to separate, I don't think this will ever happen, realize that I can live without you,
Hmm.
right?
Yeah.
I choose, and I think it's important to understand. I choose to be with you. I choose to love you, and same goes for you. You choose to love me. You choose to be with me,
Right.
but we also realize that we bring something to the table, and that doesn't take away from any other couple where like I said, one parent is stay at home and the other works out, because being a stay at home parent is a full time 24/7, probably one of the hardest jobs
Hmm.
to have out there. But just for me, it gives me a certain freedom knowing that there's a certain financial independence that I have and that I choose to couple that with you, but just knowing that, in the small chance that something were to happen, I can still exist on my own and help support our children and things of that nature. I think
Right.
that's important for a lot of ladies in this time, right?
Yeah.
And I would say even for our daughter, I think I would encourage her to do whatever her heart's desire is, whether that's be a stay at home mom or to work. But I just want her to at least have a trade or a skill set where, if God forbid she and her partner were to separate, she can still, have some financial freedom and, not be in a rut, so to speak.
Yeah. And I know from my standpoint that makes me feel better knowing that there's no reason that you want to stay with me other than the fact that you want to be with me and that you enjoy my company, that you want to do parenting with me. There's no, you're not with me for your own security.
Yeah. And I'm not going to lie, I also enjoy, just from, you probably may agree with this too, working gives me something outside of my family, if that makes sense. I love my family. I love you. I
Yeah.
love the kiddos. But sometimes you need something else to focus
Yeah.
on, and work, although stressful sometimes. It gives me something else to feel like, that it gives me another project, something outside of the bubble of kids
Hmm.
and our relationship for me to work on. And I think for me, that's important that I have something of my own that I'm, actively, working on, I
Yeah.
guess. Yeah.
And now we're not going to work forever. I think that
No.
there's going to come a point in time whenever everything makes sense, and you and I will probably stop working at the same time.
Yeah, or if I do work, it's, maybe once a week or twice a week. I will choose kind of my hours. That kind of situation, I think, would be ideal. But no, I don't want to be working full time
Yeah.
for the next 40 years. That's not the plan. Now, do you have a certain guilt with being a full time or working parent?
Uh, yeah, and actually, that's a good segue into some other things I want to talk about from the working parent paradigm. I I feel guilty because I don't keep up with. I'm not in the PTO or whatever. I don't go to all of the school functions, that some of the other parents go to. I know, and sometimes I worry with the kids because a lot of their friends have a stay-at-home parent, and those stay-at-home parents, they tend to flock together at the school, and they usually know the teachers, and they usually like communicate with each other on the Facebook in the groups that we're not invited to,
Yeah.
they know like which teachers in the next grade are the good teachers. They know what sort of a social events are coming up for kids to go to, and it's very cliquey, and so sometimes I feel guilty because I know we're never going to be in that clique. We're never going to be in the stay-at-home parent group, and a lot of time, as you alluded to, when we do meet parents of our kids' friends, a lot of times one of the parents is stay at home, and they don't relate to us. And so it's kind of difficult for us, I feel like, to form relationships with the kids' friends because we're not similarly situated to the kids' friends. I feel like sometimes kids' moms are intimidated by Z because of her position or what have you. We just don't fit in.
My viewpoint differs a bit because, like I said, I grew up where both parents worked, and I don't feel like our kids are gonna feel any less loved. I feel like we can give them adequate love and support with being full time parents because I felt that way during my childhood. So I don't really feel as much guilt. Now,
I just don't want them to feel different. You know what I mean?
yeah, and I don't think and if they do, I don't think difference is necessarily bad, right? Unless we're neglecting them in some ways. But like I said, my mom would sometime spend 3, 4 days outside the home helping, take care of elderly individuals. And yes, of course I miss her, but I don't think I felt any less love. The time that we spent together was quality time. And I think as long as we do that with our kids, I don't think that, they're at a disadvantage. So I don't feel the same guilt. I understand where you're coming from, but I don't know if I feel it just because I guess I've lived through it.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like as long as you're making an effort to make use of the time that you do have with your children, and we still have a lot of time with our children,
We
right?
do.
It's not like I even, am away for days, and neither are you. We spend the weekends,
Mm-hmm.
evenings, you know, kids are overloved in my opinion. So yes, it's nice to be able to go to the ice cream social and do this play date in this group. We literally just don't have that time. And I think our kids are doing fine.
I hope so.
Yeah. So
I hope so.
I don't know, just my thought.
My hope is always that the kids have a better experience than I did.
Yeah.
And
Sometimes I feel like you carry a guilt for the amount of work that you do at times.
I think I'm a person who carries guilt in general.
Okay.
Uh,
Well, anyway, we just want to give you some of our random thoughts
our tired ramblings.
about being working parents. If you guys have any comments, advice, please comment below. And please don't forget to like and subscribe. Until next time, we will talk to you guys later. Good night.